There is a moment in the 20th season of Family Guy where the entire Griffin family stands around a dead pizza delivery man slumped on their downstairs toilet, and the first sentence out of Peter's mouth is not, "Call the police." The first sentence is, "How do they make sure Lois never finds out they ordered pizza?" A man has died in their bathroom. The thing they are afraid of getting caught for is the dinner order. That moment is not a one-off. That moment is the whole show. Family Guy has spent 25 years quietly teaching its audience how to bury things, bodies, injuries, affairs, whole murders. The family on screen has covered up more in one neighborhood than most crime dramas manage in a full series. And the network running the show has been covering things up in its own way the entire time. This is every cover-up in Family Guy. The ones the Griffins hid from each other, and the ones Fox hid from you. Welcome to Red Umbrella. Let's get started. The pizza delivery man on the toilet. There is a moment in Family Guy, Season 20, Episode 12, where the entire Griffin family stands around a dead body on their downstairs toilet, and nobody panics in the way a normal family would. They look at him, they check for a pulse, they confirm he is gone, and then, almost immediately, the conversation shifts to one question, and one question only. How do they make sure Lois never finds out they ordered pizza? Not how do they call the police, not how do they tell his family. Pizza. That is the part that has to stay hidden. That choice, that exact framing, is the entire cover-up in miniature. The Griffins are not afraid of a man dying in their bathroom. They are afraid of getting in trouble for what they ordered for dinner. The episode is called The Lois Quagmire. It first aired on February 27th, 2022. The setup is simple, in the way Family Guy episodes usually are. Lois has a high school reunion coming up. She does not want Peter there. Peter, in her own words, embarrasses her. So she asks Quagmire to come along instead and pretend to be her husband for the weekend. She packs up, she leaves. Before she goes, she gives the family one rule. The fridge is full of healthy food. Nobody orders pizza. Their weight, she says, is a reflection on her. And just like every Family Guy rule that gets stated out loud in the first 3 minutes, this one exists only so it can be broken. The second Lois pulls out of the driveway, Peter is already thinking about pizza. He says it almost like a thought he didn't mean to have out loud. The pizza. Now that's an idea. The kids agree, Brian agrees, Stewie agrees. The pizza gets ordered. The delivery guy shows up. His name is Georgie, and the show treats him like a guy you might actually know. A slightly sad, slightly tired man who plays in a small band on the side and hangs around the house like he has nowhere better to be. He hands over the pizza. He asks if he can use the bathroom. The Griffins say yes. He never comes back out. Stewie is the one who notices first. He looks out the window and points out that the delivery man's car is still running outside. The family heads upstairs. They open the bathroom door, and there he is, slumped on the toilet. Brian, in a moment that almost feels too quiet for Family Guy, walks over and checks the man's pulse. He looks up. He says it plainly. He's dead. A heart attack, the show implies. Right there in their bathroom with his pants down. This is the moment a real family calls 911. The Griffins, instead, hold a meeting. Peter speaks first. The line is delivered like a man reading off a checklist. They have to get rid of the body, he says, so Lois cannot connect them to the pizza. Then he opens the floor for ideas. Anybody got any? And the kids, with the kind of immediate creativity that suggests they have thought about this kind of thing before, start pitching options. Chris suggests they put a yarmulke on the body and dump him in the town square so it looks like a hate crime. Peter dismisses this not on moral grounds, but on practical ones. They don't have a yarmulke. Meg suggests tying balloons to him so he floats away into the sky and becomes, in her words, the sky's problem. This is a real line. The show actually has her reference the Pixar movie Up as her plan for hiding a corpse. The cover-up is in full swing within 30 seconds of finding the body. Nobody hesitates. Nobody pushes back. Brian, who is usually the moral voice in the room, is just there, standing in the bathroom, going along with it. The plan that actually gets chosen is even worse than the ones that got rejected. Stewie checks Georgie's phone, which has just buzzed with a text. There are still pizzas in his car waiting to be delivered. The pizza shop is going to know that the Griffins were his last stop before he disappeared, which means Lois is going to find out, which means the kids and Peter have to do the one thing that solves the problem. They have to deliver the rest of his pizzas for him. So nobody calls the shop, so nobody comes looking. And to do that, they need Georgie to look alive, so they put him in the passenger seat of his own car, and they make Meg climb into his uniform with him. The exact line Peter uses to propose this is one of the strangest lines in the late-era show. He puts it to a vote. All those in favor of Meg getting in the dead guy's clothes and scarecrowing him in, raise your hand. Meg agrees, and her reason is the part that makes the whole thing land. She says fine, but only because she is starved for human contact, and he is not fully cold yet. The joke is bleak. The joke hook is also exactly Meg. Even in the middle of a cover-up involving a corpse, the show finds a way to remind the audience that nobody in this house treats her like she is loved. What follows is a sequence pulled almost directly from a movie called Weekend at Bernie's, where two characters drag a dead body around and pretend he is alive for 90 minutes. Family Guy compresses the whole idea into one act. Meg, dressed as Georgie, with Georgie's actual body scarecrowed in beside her, drives around Quahog, finishing his shift. They make small talk with customers who think Georgie is just being shy. Georgie's real friends greet his corpse like he is fine. Joe, of all people, a literal police officer who lives next door, who is trained to recognize a dead man on sight, pulls up next to the car at one point and chats with the body like everything is normal. He notices nothing. He is a cop. He should notice. He doesn't. That is the show being honest about how invisible this whole thing actually is. Nobody in Quahog is paying close enough attention to catch 4 kids and a baby driving a dead man around. The world is half asleep. The cover-up works because the world refuses to look. The plan starts to fall apart when the family realizes they cannot actually get rid of the body. They try to push Georgie into the sewer. He is too heavy. They try to wedge him in. He gets stuck. They are still standing there, struggling with the corpse, when Lois pulls up. She has come home early. She sees what they have done. The whole cover-up is exposed in a single moment. Not by the police, not by an investigation, not by a guilty conscience, but by a wife showing up earlier than expected. The Griffins do not get caught because they were sloppy. They get caught because Lois exists. And the way the episode ends is the part that gives the whole cover-up its real weight. Lois does not get angry about the dead man. She gets angry about the pizza. Even at the end, even after seeing them mid-disposal of a human body, the thing that registers as the actual betrayal in the show's own logic is that they ordered pizza when she told them not to. The corpse is barely the point. The corpse is the byproduct. The cover-up was always about the pizza. And there is one more beat that turns the whole thing into something stranger. Earlier in the episode, before Lois caught them, the family had finally agreed to dump the body in the sewer. Before they did, they paused. They said a little eulogy for him. A short one. Almost gentle. They had spent the whole episode using his corpse as a tool, dressing his body in his own clothes, parading him through town. And then, before they pushed him into a hole in the ground, they took a moment to be sad for him. It does not undo what they did. It is too small to. But it is the show quietly admitting that the people in this house know, on some level, that what they are doing is wrong. They just keep doing it anyway. Because the alternative, telling Lois, is somehow scarier than burying a man in a sewer. That is the engine of every Family Guy cover-up. The fear of getting in trouble at home is bigger than the fear of getting in trouble with the law. The pizza cover-up also reveals something specific about how this family solves problems together. There is no leader. Peter is not really running this. The kids pitch ideas like they are pitching at a school project. Stewie, the baby, is the one tracking timelines and incoming texts. Brian, the moral compass, has gone fully silent. And Meg, who in any other episode is the punching bag, gets handed the worst job and just does it, because at this point she is too lonely to say no. The cover-up is not the work of one bad person. It is the work of an entire household, each of them slotting into the role they have always played, applying their normal personalities to a deeply not normal situation. The dynamic that makes the rest of the show work, Peter clueless, Stewie sharp, Meg ignored, Brian quiet, is the same dynamic that makes them all dangerous in a crisis. Nobody objects, because objecting is not a thing this family does. A normal family would call for help. The Griffins debate whether to use balloons. Watch the scene where Brian checks the pulse. Not the joke, the pulse part. He leans over. He puts a hand on the man's neck. He confirms the death. And then he just nods. He does not freak out. He does not suggest calling anyone. He treats the moment like a guy confirming a bus is late. Family Guy is so used to its own absurdity by season 20 that even the show's most grounded character has lost the ability to react like a real being to a real death. The cover-up does not start when Peter says they have to get rid of the body. The cover-up starts a beat earlier, in Brian's nod. The first thing the family does is choose, silently, to let the moment slide. Everything after that is just paperwork. The episode does not end with anyone in trouble. There is no police investigation. There is no funeral scene. There is no arrest. The next episode of Family Guy starts as if Georgie never existed at all. He is gone. His family, if he had one, never finds out what happened. His friends, real friends, with names, saw his corpse and did not realize. The town moves on. Quahog forgets. The show forgets. He is one of a long line of people in Family Guy who die in the background of someone else's bad day and are never spoken of again. That last detail is the part worth holding on to for what is coming next. The pizza cover-up is light. It is goofy. It plays for laughs. Nobody important gets hurt. The dead man is a stranger. The stakes are pizza. But the same family, the same exact instincts, the same exact reactions, the same speed in choosing to hide rather than tell, will soon be applied to something much closer to home. The next cover-up is not a stranger on a toilet. The next cover-up is the Griffins covering up an injury to one of their own. And the person they hide it from is going to be the same person who came home early in this one. The wife in the kitchen who is the only thing this family is genuinely afraid of. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If a stranger's body could be dressed up and driven around town to keep Lois from finding out about a pizza, the question worth sitting with is what this family is willing to do to one of their own children to protect themselves from her. The answer in season 8 came months before anyone died, and it involved a baby, a flight of stairs, and a hat. Section 2, Stewie's cracked skull and the family-wide frame job. 12 years before the pizza guy died on the toilet, the same family did something worse to one of their own. The episode is called Brian Griffin's House of Pain. It is the 15th episode of season 8. It first aired on March 28th, 2010. The main plot is about Brian writing a TV pilot that gets ruined by a rude executive. That part of the episode is fine. That part of the episode is not why anyone remembers it. People remember it because of what happens to Stewie. They remember it because of the hat. The B plot starts the way every Family Guy B plot starts. Small, goofy, easy to miss. Chris sneaks into Meg's bedroom and reads her diary. Meg catches him. Meg chases him. They tear through the upstairs hallway the way kids do, the way the show has shown 100 times before. Stewie happens to be standing at the top of the staircase. They run past him. They knock into him. He goes down. Not a tumble, not a slide, a full fall, head first down the entire flight. When the show cuts back to him, the wound is real. There is a deep gash across the top of his head. He is not crying. He is not moving. He is not making any sound at all. He is unconscious. And from the second Chris and Meg run down the stairs and see what they have done, the first words out of either of their mouths are not what you would expect from two children whose baby brother just hit his head hard enough to stop being awake. There is no scream for help. There is no run for the phone. There is no get mom. Instead, they pause. They look at each other and they start figuring out how to hide it. Meg is the one who suggests the hospital. She says it more than once across the episode. Maybe we should take him to the hospital. She is technically the only person in this family who behaves like a normal human being for the duration of the plot. Chris talks her out of it every time. He says they can clean the wound themselves. He says they can manage. He says nobody has to know. Meg keeps wavering. Chris keeps pushing. And the longer the conversation goes, the more obvious it becomes that this is not really about saving Stewie. This is about saving themselves. Because if Lois finds out what they did, the consequences for them will be worse than whatever happens to the baby. The first thing they do is put a hat on him. A cowboy hat, wide enough to cover the gash. They prop the hat on his head. They tie a cloth around their own legs and his, so when they walk him into the kitchen, his little feet shuffle along the floor by being dragged. They are puppeting him. They are walking the unconscious body of their baby brother into a family dinner, holding his hands, faking his steps, hiding the wound under a costume hat. And Lois, sitting at the table, looks up and smiles. Oh, look at my little cowboy. She has no idea. The cover-up is already working. This is 40 seconds in. The show has decided, very deliberately, to play this for laughs. The animation lingers on the wound. The wound gets worse over time. There is a moment deeper into the episode where Meg looks down at Stewie's head and says with full sincerity that she thinks the maggots have evolved to the point where they have developed space travel. The show then cuts to a tiny rocket of maggots flying out of Stewie's skull. That is the joke. The joke is that this child has been so thoroughly neglected for so long by his own siblings that the wound on his head is now its own civilization. The reason that joke works, in the dark sense that it works, is that everyone watching understands what it means. It means time has passed. Days, maybe more. Meg is still saying maybe we should take him to the hospital. Chris is still scrubbing the wound with a brush in the bathtub. The unconscious baby is still being treated like a problem to manage instead of a person to save. The show is making a joke about how long the cover-up has gone on, and the unit of measurement is how badly the wound has rotted. Then Peter walks in. This is the turning point of the whole plot. Most of the episode, you assume Peter is going to find out and end this. He is the dad, he is the adult in in the house, he is going to see his son unconscious in a bathtub being scrubbed with a hairbrush, and he is going to do something. The expectation builds. He opens the bathroom door. He sees Stewie floating face down. He looks at Chris. He asks the question, and the way Peter asks it is what makes the scene so wrong. So, question, he says, how long has Stewie been unconscious? That is not a parent finding out about an injury. That is a parent recognizing the situation. He has identified it on sight. Meg breaks down crying, certain they are caught. Dad, I am so sorry, she says. We should have told somebody. We were too scared. I wanted to take him to the hospital, but Chris would not let me. And Peter looks at Chris. And Peter, the father of these children, says, good, Chris. I have taught you well. You have got the right instincts. He is proud of him. This is the moment the episode makes clear what this family actually is. Peter is not horrified. Peter is impressed. He explains, calmly, that he has knocked Chris and Meg out plenty of times before. The line is delivered so casually that the show is essentially admitting in passing that the Griffin children have been knocked unconscious by their own father at some unspecified frequency, and that he has taught them what to do when it happens. Hide the body. Pretend things are fine. Wait for it to blow over. The cover-up of Stewie's injury is not new behavior. It is family tradition. And then Peter does the thing that takes this from a cover-up into something darker. He decides to use the situation to frame Lois. Lois is the one person in the house Peter is afraid of. Lois is the one who would actually do something if she knew. Lois is the wife who, in 20 years of episodes, has been the only steady moral check on anything that happens in that house. So Peter, holding the unconscious body of his own youngest son, walks outside, waits for Lois to start backing the car out of the driveway, and throws Stewie behind the rear tire. She runs over him. She gets out of the car, hands shaking, and sees what she thinks she has just done. She looks at Peter. Her first instinct, in the immediate panic of believing she has hit her own baby, is exactly what Chris and Meg's first instinct was. She does not say call an ambulance. She does not say get him to a hospital. She says, with the same survival reflex the kids had, that they need to cover this up. She suggests putting a hat on him to hide the wound. She suggests drawing eyeballs on his closed eyelids with makeup so it looks like he is awake. She suggests pinning it on someone else. Peter looks at her, and the line he gives her is the strangest line in the whole episode. I love you so much right now. That is the moment the marriage makes sense. That is the moment everything about Peter and Lois clicks into place. He has just spent his whole life with this woman, and the thing that finally makes him say I love you with full sincerity is watching her, in a moment of pure terror, default to the same cover-up instinct he has. They are not together because they understand each other on some deep emotional level. They are together because when something goes wrong, they reach for the same shovel. Lois has spent 20 years of episodes acting like she is the moral one in the house, and the second she thinks she has actually hurt one of her own children, she is the first one to suggest hiding the body. The cover-up ends, mercifully, with Peter agreeing to take Stewie to the hospital. The way the show frames this, it is a happy ending. He is being a good father. He is doing the right thing. But the only reason any of it happens is because Peter loves Lois enough in that exact moment to spare her the work of staging a frame job. The dialogue is clear. He says, let us go to the hospital. He does not say, let us call the police on ourselves for what we just did to our son. The hospital trip is the romantic gesture. The truth is still being hidden. When Stewie finally walks back into the living room at the end of the episode, his head is wrapped in bandages, and the show casually drops in that several months have passed. Several months. He was unconscious for several months. Nobody is in jail. Nobody is in the news. Nobody outside the family ever finds out what happened. The hospital, presumably, was given some story. Lois, who watched her own husband throw their child under her car, never brings it up again. The Griffins ate dinner. Brian was on TV. Stewie came home. Life resumed. What makes this cover-up different from the pizza one is the scale of it. In the pizza episode, 4 kids and Peter conspired to hide a stranger's body from one woman in the family. In this one, all 5 other members of the household conspired against the youngest one. Chris and Meg did the original damage. They buried it under a hat. Peter found out and made it worse. Lois nearly closed the loop by agreeing to fake a frame. Brian, the supposed conscience of the show, is barely in the B-plot at all. He is off chasing his TV pilot dream, and his absence is doing real work. The one character who would have stopped this was looking the other way. The show frames the whole arc as comedy. The maggots are a joke. The cowboy hat is a joke. The line about taking him to the hospital eventually getting agreed to is treated as a sweet, romantic beat between Peter and Lois. The audience is invited to laugh at how casually a baby gets hurt and how casually a family covers it up. And the laughter has to be earned, in the way Family Guy earned turns laughs. By getting the audience to forget for 20 minutes that they are watching a household decide, repeatedly, that the easier thing to do is hide than help. Stewie himself never gets to say what happened. He is unconscious for the whole plot. The show denies him the chance to react, to be angry, to remember. When he comes back at the end, head wrapped, he just walks in, says one line, and the credits start. The victim is silenced by the format. He is a baby. He cannot tell anyone what was done to him. The cover-up did not just hide the injury. The cover-up hid the entire crime from the only person in the house who could have meaningfully accused anyone. That last detail is the one that bridges into what comes next. In this episode, the people doing the cover-up were the family of the person they were hiding the truth from. Stewie was their son, their brother, their baby. They knew him, they lived with him, and they still chose, every one of them, to put concealment ahead of his health. The cover-up worked because love did not stop them. They loved him in whatever bent way the Griffins love each other, and they covered it up anyway. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. So what happens when the body is not someone they love at all? What happens when the body is just a stranger they did not mean to kill, and nobody in the family is involved at all? And the only people who could give the victim any kind of justice are the same 4 men who killed him by accident in the dark. That cover-up, the one that lives outside the Griffin house, is older than this one. It happened in an abandoned asylum. It involved a war hero. It involved a hook. And the most disturbing part of how it ends is that it ends with the men who buried him deciding, when the truth comes out, that they were right to bury him after all. Section 3. The War Hero in the Asylum Basement. The episode is called Paranormal Activity. It is the 4th episode of Season 14. It first aired on October 25th, 2015. The title is a play on the horror movie series Paranormal Activity, and that is the only piece of this episode that feels light. Everything else about it sits on top of a cover-up so dark that the show needs to spend the last act inventing a moral escape route just to let the audience laugh again at the end. The setup is small. Peter, Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire go see a horror movie at the theater. They hate it. They walk out of the theater certain they could do better, so they decide to write their own. The pitches are useless. Peter wants a movie about a monster cat. Quagmire wants a movie about a possessed bar of soap. Joe wants a movie about a serial killer who only kills people who eat cereal. None of these go anywhere. The 4 of them realize they are not getting anywhere sitting in a bar drinking, so they decide to drive out to an abandoned asylum on the edge of Quahog. They want atmosphere. They want inspiration. They want to feel something scary so they can write something scary. This is the part of the episode where most viewers stop paying close attention because the show is still running on autopilot. 4 guys in a haunted building, cliche horror premise, some easy jokes about how spooky it is in there. They wander down hallways, they poke around in the dark, they climb through a vent and end up in the basement. Standard. What happens next is what the rest of the episode never quite recovers from. In the basement, in the dark, they hear footsteps. They turn around, and coming toward them, slowly, out of the gloom, is a man with a hook for a hand. The exact horror movie image. The thing the audience has been trained for decades to read as a threat. The 4 of them panic. They do not run. They tackle him. All 4 of them on top of one man, in the dark, in a building they should not be in. They beat him. The animation does not flinch. They beat him until he stops moving. They beat him to death. And only then, only after he is on the floor, do they look at what they have actually done. He has a name tag. The name tag says Albert. He is wearing a janitor's uniform. He is the caretaker of the building. The hook on his arm is not a weapon. He lost his hand in the Korean War, saving the lives of 6 other men. He was a veteran, a war hero. And his last words, before he died on the floor of the basement they had no business being in, were that he was trying to help them. He had heard them break in. He came down to make sure they were okay. He was holding a flashlight, not a hook. The hook was just his hand. This is the moment a normal human being in a normal show calls the police. Even in Family Guy, where calling the police is treated as the option you only consider after the worse options are exhausted, you would expect at least a debate. There is one, briefly. Quagmire, of all people, is the one who suggests turning themselves in. The man who has spent 2 decades on this show being treated as the worst behaved character in Quahog is the one who looks at the body and says they should go to the cops. Joe shuts him down. Joe, the police officer. Joe, the one whose entire identity on the show is built around being the law in this neighborhood. Joe is the one who refuses. His reason is the part that makes it worse. He does not give a moral argument. He does not say it would ruin their lives, or that the dead man's family deserves not to know. He gives a practical one. Do you know what they do to cops in prison? That is the line. That is the sentence that ends the conversation. The four of them agree, in less than 30 seconds of dialogue, that the body is going in the ground. They bury him. And then they find his car, still in the parking lot. The car is a problem. If the car is sitting outside the asylum, somebody is going to come looking for it eventually, and somebody is going to start asking questions about the man who drove it. So the four of them dig a second hole, right next to the first one. They roll the car in. They cover it. The asylum parking lot now contains 2 graves, side by side. One for a man, and one for the car he drove to work that day. The cover-up is not just hiding the body. The cover-up is hiding the existence of the man entirely, erasing him, making sure that whoever loved him, whoever was waiting for him at home, would have nothing to find. The episode then moves into the part that actually makes the cover-up feel like a cover-up, because they go home, and they have to live with it. Peter goes home and tries to act normal. Lois starts dropping casual lines into the kitchen that he is convinced are about the body. She tells him she found something disgusting that he did, and his face goes white before she clarifies that she means he left dirty dishes in the sink. She sings along to an old song on the radio whose lyrics, in his ears, sound like a confession. She reads aloud from the newspaper that they have found the body of a war hero down by the old asylum. He nearly collapses before she explains that she was reading about a different story entirely. The show is doing a specific thing here. The show is showing how a cover-up works on the inside. Every word out of an innocent person's mouth becomes a possible accusation. Every coincidence becomes a clue you are sure is closing in on you. The cover-up is not a thing you do once and then forget. The cover-up follows you into your kitchen. It sits at the table while you eat dinner. The four of them meet at the Drunken Clam the next day. Peter is jittery. He has not slept. Joe is on edge. Cleveland looks haunted. And Quagmire, the one who wanted to turn themselves in, has decided in the night that he is going to save himself by selling out the others. He shows up with a photoshopped photo. This is one of the most quietly funny, dark moments in the episode. Quagmire claims he was not at the asylum that night. He claims he was in St. Louis. He produces a photo of himself standing in front of a St. Louis landmark, holding a newspaper to prove the date. The other three look at the photo. The photo is terrible. The Photoshop work is awful. The newspaper he is holding is the Quahog Informer, which is the local newspaper of their own town. It is not even sold in St. Louis. He is essentially presenting them with proof that he was in Quahog while claiming it proves he was in St. Louis. And he is dead serious. The cover-up has gotten so deep, so fast, that grown men are now manufacturing fake alibis against each other less than 24 hours after the burial. The whole back half of the episode becomes a quiet civil war between the four of them. Each one starts planning to frame one of the others. Peter goes back to the asylum to plant evidence on Quagmire. He gets there and finds Joe and Cleveland and Quagmire already there, each of them with the same plan, each of them trying to frame a different one. The men who buried a body together are now standing in the same parking lot at midnight trying to make sure each other go to prison for it. The friendship that had carried this show for 14 seasons collapses in this single episode the second the stakes get real. And then the show does the thing it has to do to be Family Guy. It lets them off the hook. A newspaper headline reveals in the final act that the man they killed was secretly a leader in the Ku Klux Klan, the exact word the show uses. The body in the ground was a war hero with a Korean War Bronze Star, and also, the paper claims, the local head of a hate group. And the reaction from the four men is not relief exactly. It is not even joy. It is something colder. They look at the headline, they look at each other, and they decide, silently, that the killing was actually fine. Peter says something close to a load off. The episode ends, the credits roll, the body stays buried, the car stays buried, nobody ever finds out. This is the part of the episode that is the most carefully designed and the most carefully ignored. The show needed an ending. It needed a way for the audience to close the laptop and feel like the four guys at the bar were still the four guys at the bar. So it gave them a get-out clause. The dead man, as it turned out, was secretly a monster. So the killing was secretly justice. That is the moral logic the episode hands to its audience on a plate. It is meant to be received as a punchline. It is meant to dissolve the weight of the burial. It does not actually dissolve anything. It just relocates the cover-up. The four of them did not know any of this when they killed him. They did not know it when they were arguing in the basement about turning themselves in. They did not know it when they were digging the second hole for the car. At every step of the cover-up, they believed they had killed a war hero who came down to help them, and they buried him anyway. The last-minute reveal does not change what they were willing to do. It only changes what the audience is allowed to feel about it. They were willing to bury a good man, frame each other for it, and let his family wonder forever where he went. The newspaper headline is the show's way of giving the audience permission to laugh. The men themselves never had to earn that permission. This is how Family Guy handles the heaviest cover-ups in its catalog. It builds a serious situation, lets it sit on screen long enough to feel real, and then drops one detail at the very end that lets everyone walk away. It is a magic trick the show has perfected over 20-plus seasons. The trick only works if you do not look at it too closely. The second you do, you notice that the war hero stays in the ground regardless of what the newspaper said. His family, if he had one, never gets him back. His grave is in a parking lot next to his own car. The men who killed him remain best friends. The bar where they meet looks the same the next week. What makes Peter Normal Activity worth thinking about, more than the cat cover-up or the toilet cover-up, is that it is the first one in this list where the people doing the covering are not actually the Griffins. It is Peter and his friends. It is the social circle, not the household. The cover-up does not just live inside a family. It lives inside a friendship. The same instincts that pulled Chris and Meg into hiding a wound from Lois pull Peter and Joe and Cleveland and Quagmire into hiding a body from each other's wives, from the police, from the town. The reflex scales up. Whatever this thing is in Quahog, this trained habit of choosing concealment over confession, it is not specific to one house. It is in the air. It is in the bar. It is in the police force. Joe is wearing the badge, and Joe is the one who said no to turning themselves in. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That last point is the bridge into what comes next. Because if 4 men can bury a war hero in a parking lot and walk away laughing, and if a baby can be hidden in a cowboy hat for months, and if a corpse on a toilet can be turned into a weekend at Bernie's road trip, then the question becomes, how small a victim has to be before this town actually feels something? The next cover-up is not a man. The next cover-up is not a child. The next cover-up is a pet. A cat that one of the main characters loves more than almost anything in his life. The cat is killed by accident. The killer is one of his closest friends. And the lie that gets told to cover it up is one of the coldest endings the show has ever written. Because it does not end with the lie. It ends with the killer collecting a reward for the lie, knowing the whole time he is the one who did it. Section 4. Quagmire's Cat. The episode is called 420. It is the 12th episode of Season 7. It first aired on April 19th, 2009. The episode is mostly remembered for its main plot, which involves Brian and Stewie convincing the town to legalize marijuana. There is a song. There is a musical number. The song became the part of the episode that people quote. But underneath all of that, sitting in the B-plot like a quiet trap, is one of the meanest small cover-ups Family Guy has ever written. It involves a cat named James. It involves a prank that goes wrong. And it ends with one of the coldest doorstep moments in the entire show. The setup is small. Quagmire has gotten a new cat. The cat is named James. Quagmire loves the cat. He loves the cat in a way that feels different from how Quagmire loves anything else on the show. Quagmire has spent 20 seasons of episodes treating women like objects, treating his own body like a weapon, treating sex like a hobby that occasionally requires a hospital visit. He is not, as a character, written to feel deeply about much. So when the show drops in this little detail that he has gotten a pet and that he is spending most of his free time with this pet, it lands as something almost soft. Quagmire has found a thing in his life that does not require him to perform. The other guys do not like it. Peter, Brian, Cleveland, and Joe start to feel like Quagmire is choosing the cat over them. He skips out on hangs, he misses bar nights, he stays home with James. They get jealous. The way the show frames it, the 4 of them feel replaced. So they decide, in the way grown men in Quahog decide things, that they are going to play a prank on the cat. While Quagmire is out, they will sneak into his house and shave James. The cat will look ridiculous. Quagmire will be embarrassed. The order of the friend group will be restored. That is the plan. It does not survive contact with reality. Peter is the one holding the razor. The exact mechanics of what happens next, the show plays for the kind of split-second wince that Family Guy uses when it wants the audience to laugh and gasp at the same time. The razor slips. The cat does not move the right way. The animation cuts to Peter's face, frozen, and to the cat, motionless. James is dead. Peter has just killed Quagmire's pet with a razor in Quagmire's own home in the middle of a prank that was meant to last 30 seconds. There is a beat. There is no music. There is no joke yet. Peter and Brian are standing over a dead cat in a house that is not theirs. And then the cover-up starts. The decision is fast, faster than the pizza cover-up, faster than the asylum cover-up. There is no debate. There is no Quagmire-style suggestion to turn themselves in, because Quagmire is the victim this time, and the only people in the room are the ones who did it. Peter and Brian agree, in a single exchange, that they cannot tell Quagmire what happened. They cannot return his cat to him in a box. They cannot apologize. The friendship is too fragile, and the truth is too ugly. So they pick up the body of James, they walk it out of the house, and they hide it. The plan they settle on is clean and cruel. They will make Quagmire believe his cat ran away. They will say nothing. They will let him search. They will let him put up posters. They will let him cry if he cries. They will sit at the bar with him while he wonders out loud where his cat could possibly be. And they will nod, and they will look concerned, and they will offer no information at all. The cat will simply be gone, in the way that cats sometimes go missing, and Quagmire will be left to sit with that absence for the rest of his life. This is what makes the cover-up particular. This is what separates it from the bigger ones. Nobody is hiding a corpse on a toilet from a wife. Nobody is hiding an injured baby from a mother. The thing being hidden here is a small thing, and the person it is being hidden from is not a stranger, not a victim across town, not a family member who lives in the same house. It is one of the closest friends Peter has ever had. It is the man who has been at Peter's bar table since the first episode. The lie is being told inside a friendship, and the friendship has to keep operating around the lie like nothing happened. And that is exactly what the show shows. The B-plot threads through the rest of the episode in small beats. The marijuana storyline takes up most of the running time, but every few minutes the show cuts back to Quagmire, alone, looking for James. The episode does not dwell. It does not turn into a pet grief story. The cuts are brief, they are quick, they are designed to land and then move on. Quagmire wandering the neighborhood. Quagmire calling out the cat's name. Quagmire putting up a flyer. Quagmire offering a reward. The reward goes up over the course of the episode. It starts small, then it gets bigger. The desperation gets clearer with every cut. He wants this cat back. He misses this cat. He is willing to pay real money to anybody who can help. Peter and Brian know where the cat is the whole time. The cat is dead. The cat has been dead since Act 1. They have known it for the entire runtime of the episode. They sit at the bar with Quagmire. They watch him put up flyers. They watch him talk about the cat. They watch the reward go up. They say nothing. This is one of the coldest extended scenes Family Guy has ever asked its audience to live inside. The show is not playing this for big jokes. The show is just letting it sit. There are little gags scattered through the cuts, but the structure of the B-plot is a friend grieving a loss, while two other friends who caused the loss sit in the same room and pretend not to know anything about it. That is the exact shape of every long-running lie inside of friendship. It is a lie that has to be maintained in real time, in normal social settings, while the person being lied to acts as if everything is fine because they have no reason to think it is not. And then the episode ends. The final scene of the B-plot is the part that has stuck with people for over 15 years. Quagmire arrives at the Griffin door. He is holding a flyer. He is offering a higher reward than ever before. He has come to the Griffins specifically, his closest friends, to ask for help one more time. He has raised the money on his cat. He is willing to pay anyone, no questions asked, who can help him find James. The line is delivered with that little tremor in Quagmire's voice that the show only uses when something matters. Peter opens the door. Peter takes the money. Peter, casually, in the tone he uses when he is bored, admits to Quagmire that he is the one who killed the cat. And then he closes the door in Quagmire's face before Quagmire can react. That is the ending. That is how the B-plot stops. The audience does not see what Quagmire does next. The audience does not see Peter face any consequence. The episode just ends. Quagmire is left standing on the porch holding the empty hand he just gave money out of. Peter has the cash. The cat is still dead. The whole arc of the cover-up, from the razor to the burial to the flyers to the reward, ends with the killer collecting a reward from the victim for information about a crime he committed himself, and then ending the conversation by closing a door. The choice the writers made there is worth pausing on. Almost every other cover-up in Family Guy ends with the truth either staying buried or coming out in a way that lets everyone laugh and reset. The pizza guy gets dumped in a sewer. The war hero gets reframed as a monster. The asylum bodies stay buried. Stewie's head gets a hospital trip. There is always a release valve. The audience is allowed to walk away clean. In this episode, the release valve is replaced with something colder. The truth comes out, and the truth is treated by the man telling it as a small annoyance to deal with on his way back to the couch. Peter is not relieved to confess. Peter is not unburdened. Peter is just done with the bit. The cat is dead. dead. The money is in his hand, and the door is closed. And the cruelest part of how the show writes it is that Quagmire, on the other side of the door, is left with a fact he has no idea what to do with. He has just paid his best friend a reward for the information that his best friend killed his cat. He cannot unknow it. He cannot unpay it. He cannot kick the door back open and make it a different scene. The door is closed. The friendship has just absorbed something it should not be able to survive. And the show ends the episode there, before anybody has to figure out what happens next. Family Guy, in its later seasons especially, has a habit of pretending the show has no memory. Things happen, things resolve, the next episode resets. James the cat is one of the cleanest examples of that habit. By the next episode of season 7, Quagmire is at the bar with Peter, as if the door scene never occurred. The show makes no reference to the cat. The reward is never mentioned. The friendship is intact. The implication, if you take the episode seriously, is that Quagmire has decided to swallow what just happened. The cover-up is over. The truth is out. And the response inside the friendship is to act as if the truth never came out at all. That is a different kind of cover-up. The first cover-up was the lie about the cat. The second cover-up is the silence about the confession. Quagmire knows. Peter knows that Quagmire knows. Brian knows. Nobody talks about it. The friendship continues by mutual agreement that the conversation at the door is not going to be brought up again. It is one of the only times Family Guy hands its audience a piece of information and then asks them to participate in the forgetting. There is a smallness to this cover-up that gives it weight the bigger ones do not have. Nobody dies who matters to anyone outside the show. Nobody goes to court. Nobody gets framed. The whole arc takes maybe 7 minutes of total screen time, scattered across an episode that is mostly about something else entirely. But the smallness is the point. The Griffins and their friends will lie about anything. They will lie about a body. They will lie about a baby. They will lie about a war hero. And, in this episode, they will lie about a cat to a man they have known for years, for as long as it takes for the man to give them money. There is no scale at which the lie does not get told. The reflex covers everything. Big problems get the same treatment as small ones. The shovel comes out either way. What makes the cat cover-up the right entry point into what comes next is that it is the first cover-up so far in this list where the lie has a clear victim. And the victim is somebody the audience genuinely likes. Georgie the pizza guy was a stranger. Albert the war hero was a stranger. Stewie was unconscious for the duration of his own arc. Quagmire is awake. Quagmire is present. Quagmire feels the loss. The audience watches him feel it. And the show asks the audience to laugh anyway. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. If the show is willing to do that to a man over a cat and willing to make the joke land by closing a door on him, then the question worth holding on to is what the show is willing to do when the person being deceived is in genuine danger from someone genuinely dangerous. Because the next cover-up is not about a pet. The next cover-up is about a fiancé. The fiancé is violent. The man on the receiving end of the violence is somebody Quagmire actually loves more than he loved James. And the lie this time is not closed with a door. The lie this time is folded up into a forged letter handed to a grieving woman the morning after, while the men who wrote it stand in her kitchen and watch her read it. Section 5. The Murder of Jeff Feelman and the Forged Goodbye Note. The episode is called Screams of Silence, the story of Brenda Q. It is the third episode of the 10th season. It first aired on October 30th, 2011. It is one of the most controversial episodes Family Guy has ever produced. And the controversy is not about a cutaway gag, and it is not about a celebrity joke, and it is not about a banned line. The controversy is that the episode is, beat for beat, a murder. 3 of the show's main male characters plan to kill a man, attempt to kill that man, succeed in killing that man, dispose of his body, and then walk into the home of the woman who loved him and hand her a forged letter pretending he chose to leave her. And the show plays the ending as a happy one. The setup is dark before the cover-up even starts. The episode opens with Peter and Joe heading out for a fishing trip with Quagmire. Quagmire does not show up. They go to his house to find out why. They walk in and find him hanging by the neck. The show is explicit about what they are looking at. He is alive but unconscious, and the reason he is hanging is one of his own private habits gone wrong. They get him to the hospital. He ends up in a coma. While he is in the hospital, his sister Brenda comes to visit. Brenda is voiced by Caitlin Olsen. She brings her boyfriend, a man man named Jeff. The full name the show gives him is Jeff Feelman, which is the kind of name Family Guy gives a character when it does not want the audience to ever forget what the writers think of him. Jeff is openly cruel to Brenda from the second he walks into the hospital room. He berates her. He talks down to her. He raises his voice in front of strangers. The other characters notice, and the show notices that they notice, and the camera lingers on the looks they exchange. When Quagmire finally wakes up, the first thing he sees is his sister being mistreated in front of him by a man he has just met. The episode pivots from a near-death story for Quagmire into something else entirely. It becomes a story about the people who love Brenda watching in real time as she is hurt by the man she sleeps next to. Lois is the first one to try to do something about it. She takes Brenda out to lunch. She asks her, gently, to take off her sunglasses. Brenda hesitates. Brenda eventually does. There is a bruise over her eye. Lois tries, in a way the show plays straight, to convince her to leave Jeff. Brenda does not leave Jeff. Brenda makes excuses for him. The exchange is uncomfortable to watch because the writers chose deliberately to write it without the cushion of Family Guy's usual jokes. There is no cutaway. There is no random song. There is just two women at a table, one trying to help the other, and the other refusing. Joe enters the conversation next. Joe is a police officer. Joe has spent 10 seasons of this show being introduced as the guy who knows the law and follows it. Quagmire goes to Joe and asks plainly what the police can do. Joe tells him in the episode that the police cannot do anything unless Brenda files a formal complaint herself. The show treats this as fact. It is not actually correct in real Rhode Island law, where a police officer with reason to believe domestic violence has occurred is required to make an arrest regardless of whether the victim presses charges. The episode is wrong about this. The writers chose to be wrong about it. They needed Joe to be useless for the plot to work. They needed every legal door to be closed, so the only door left would be the one the men eventually walk through. The men hold an intervention for Brenda. Quagmire makes the speech. The speech is, in the moment, one of the most genuine things the character has ever said on the show. He tells his sister that he wants the woman she used to be back. He tells her she is not a punching bag. He tells her she does not deserve this. The other characters watch. Brenda almost leaves. Then Jeff walks into the room. Brenda announces in front of everyone that she and Jeff are getting married and that she is pregnant. The intervention collapses. Quagmire is back where he started. Worse than where he started. Now there is going to be a baby in that house. This is the conversation that produces the murder. Peter, Quagmire, and Joe sit at the bar that night. Quagmire says the words first. He says they have to kill him. Joe, the police officer, says no. Joe says explicitly that Quagmire could go to prison even for trying. Joe says he will not be part of it. The conversation moves on. They watch Jeff slap Brenda for changing the channel on Quagmire's own television. That is the moment Joe changes his mind. The slap is what does it. Joe agrees, sitting at the bar, in his uniform, that they will kill Jeff together. The officer of the law agrees to a premeditated murder because he has watched a woman get hit one too many times in his presence and decided that the system he represents is not going to fix it. The plan is a hunting trip. They will invite Jeff out into the woods. At night, they will tell him it is bonding. They will make it look like an accident. The three of them get in a car with Jeff. They drive out. They get into the woods. And Jeff, who is not as stupid as the show usually makes him look, figures out what is happening before they do. He pulls his own gun. He knocks Peter and Joe unconscious. He drags Quagmire deeper into the woods to kill him alone. Quagmire challenges him. Quagmire goads him into putting the gun down and using his fists instead. Jeff agrees. Jeff beats Quagmire. Jeff strangles him. Quagmire collapses. Jeff is convinced he is dead. Jeff picks up a shovel and starts digging the grave. The plan, on Jeff's side, has now also become a cover-up. He is going to bury this body in the woods and drive home and tell Brenda that Quagmire never came back. The headlights of Peter's car flick on. Jeff turns around. Quagmire is behind the wheel. Quagmire, in a line the show plays half as a joke and half as the moral key to the whole episode, tells Jeff that he chokes himself every day and that surviving a strangling is something his body is unusually trained for. He hits the gas. He runs Jeff into a tree. Jeff dies on impact. The murder is done. It is now around dawn. Peter and Joe are conscious again. The three of them are standing in the woods next to a body and a wrecked car. The plan, technically, has worked. Jeff is dead. Brenda is safe. The thing that hurt the woman they all loved is no longer breathing. There is one job left, and the job is the cover-up. The cover-up is the part of of this episode that has stayed with people. The cover-up is what makes Screams of Silence sit differently from any other episode in the show's run. They do not call the police, they do not turn themselves in, they do not even tell Brenda what they did for her. They write a note. The note is short. The note is in handwriting meant to look like Jeff's. The note says that he has decided, on his own, that he is leaving her, that he thought it was best for both of them, that he is gone. The next morning, Peter, Joe, and Quagmire walk into the room where Brenda is. They tell her they have something for her. They hand her the note. They watch her read it. The animation on her face is not played for laughs. The show lets her cry. The show lets the moment last. She is pregnant with the child of a man she loved and a man who hurt her, and 3 men she trusts are standing in front of her, watching her grieve a goodbye that never happened, that was written by them in the dark the night before. She does not know. She is never going to know. The episode does not give her the truth. The episode does not even hint that she will figure it out later. The lie is permanent. Brenda Quagmire walks off into the rest of the Family Guy universe, believing her fiancé chose to leave her. The baby, if she keeps it, will grow up believing the same thing. Quagmire stays in his house. Joe stays in his uniform. Peter stays at his bar table. The 3 of them go home and sleep that night in the same beds they slept in the night before, because nothing from the outside has changed. Only what is inside their heads has changed, and the show is not interested in showing what that costs them. The thing that makes this cover-up so different from the others is who it is being told to. Every other cover-up so far in this list has been a lie told to protect the liars from the truth. The pizza cover-up was about hiding what they ordered for dinner. The asylum cover-up was about avoiding prison. The cat cover-up was about saving a friendship from a confession. The Stewie cover-up was about avoiding Lois. In every other case, the lie was selfish. The liars were saving themselves. In this episode, the lie is presented as a kindness. The men frame the forgery as something they are doing for Brenda. They tell themselves, and each other, that knowing the truth would be worse for her than not knowing it. They have decided, on her behalf, that she does not get the chance to make peace with what happened to her own fiancé. They have decided she is too fragile for the full story. They have decided she needs the simpler version. That is the part of this cover-up that scrapes against something real. The episode is, if you watch it slowly, about 3 men who have spent their lives talking down to women, who have spent 10 seasons of a show treating women like background characters, suddenly deciding that they know better than a grown woman about what truth she can handle. They love Brenda. The show is clear about that, especially in Quagmire's case. The whole reason any of this is happening is that he loves his sister. But the love is the kind of love that ends with him standing in front of her with a forged letter, watching her cry, and not saying a word. The episode ends without consequence. There is no investigation. There is no body found. There is no Brenda figuring it out in a later season. Brenda Quagmire, the character, essentially never reappears in the show after this episode. The writers retired her. They built her, broke her, and walked away. The cover-up, in production terms, was permanent. The character was sealed inside the lie and removed from the show before she could ever come back into a scene and ask a question that might unravel it. The other thing this episode is honest about, in a way the show is not always honest, is that the men who did this never look like they regret it. Peter, in the final scene, makes a joke about wanting to kill someone else next. The line is delivered to Joe and Quagmire over the body of a man they just murdered, in front of a woman they just lied to, and Peter wonders out loud whether they should go after Mort Goldman next. The other two laugh it off. The show plays it as a button on the episode. The line tells the audience exactly how seriously to take what they have just watched. The men do not feel guilty. They feel pumped up. They feel, in a small way, like they have figured something out about how to fix problems in their lives. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That confidence is what carries forward into what comes next. Because Screams of Silence was the show in a single episode, putting a cover-up at the center of the story and treating it as a victory, the next cover-up the show built scaled the same instinct up to a level it had never tried before. Instead of one murder hidden by 3 men, it was 4 murders hidden by 1 woman, and the people she was hiding them from were nearly the entire town of Quahog, locked together inside a single house on a single night with no way out. The plan was almost perfect. The plan was almost unsolvable, and the only reason it came apart in the end was because Lois Griffin happened to ask one too many questions. Section 6. Diane Simmons and the Locked Island. The episode is called And Then There Were Fewer. It is the first episode of Season 9. It first aired on September 26th, 2010. The episode is a full hour. It runs almost twice the length of a normal Family Guy episode. The The animation was upgraded for it. The episode was the first one in the show's history broadcast in high definition. The score was written by Walter Murphy, the same composer who has done the music since the first season. The episode was dedicated to Seth MacFarlane's mother, Anne Perry MacFarlane, who had died of cancer 2 months before it aired. Everything about the production says the writers knew this one was going to matter, and what they delivered was the most carefully constructed cover-up in the entire run of the show. The setup is built like an old detective novel. Almost the entire town of Quahog gets a letter in the mail. They are all invited to a dinner party in their honor at a mysterious mansion on a small island off the coast. None of them know who sent the letter. None of them know why they have been chosen. They show up. The Griffins arrive. Joe and Quagmire arrive. Tom Tucker arrives. Mort and Muriel Goldman arrive. Jillian and her husband Derek Wilcox arrive. Bonnie Swanson arrives. Everyone is led inside by a maid. They sit down at a long dining table, and the host walks in. The host is the actor James Woods. James Woods has been a recurring character on the show for years at this point. He shows up, he explains, he tells them he has invited them all there because he has become a born-again Christian. He says he has wronged each of them at some point in his life. He says he is going to spend the night making amends. He introduces his girlfriend, Priscilla. He leaves the room briefly. And in the few seconds he is out of the dining room, Quagmire's date for the night, a woman named Stephanie, gets shot. She is shot in the chair James Woods was sitting in. She is shot once. She is dead. The guests panic. They try to leave. The bridge connecting the island to the mainland gets cut off by a falling tree. The phone lines are dead. There is no cell reception. The storm gets worse. The doors are still open inside the house, but the way out is gone. Everyone in Quahog who matters to the show is locked into one mansion with a killer in it, and they have no idea who. What follows across the next 45 minutes of episode is one body after another. James Woods comes back into the dining room and gets accused of killing Stephanie. He swears he did not. He shows them a secret room. The secret room contains a private diary. The diary lists in his own hand every single grudge he has against every single person at the dinner party. Every guest now has, on paper, a possible reason to want him dead. While they read the diary, the lights go out. When the lights come back on, James Woods has been stabbed. He is on the floor. He is dead. Then, Muriel Goldman disappears. Mort, her husband, gets frantic. They split up to look for her. They find her body. She has been stabbed in the back. The killer is still in the house. The killer is still moving among them. Then, Priscilla, James Woods' girlfriend, goes missing. They find her body too, stuffed inside an air vent in the ceiling. Then, Derek Wilcox, Jillian's husband, decides to go off on his own to try to get a cell phone signal from a balcony. He does not come back. They find him below. His skull has been crushed by a Golden Globe award. The Golden Globe is missing. The remaining guests start searching the rooms. They find the missing Golden Globe under Tom Tucker's bed. Tom Tucker, the local news anchor. Tom panics. He runs. He gets caught. The next morning, the police arrive. Tom Tucker is arrested for all 4 murders. Stephanie, James Woods, Muriel, Derek. The case on the surface is closed. The town is going home. The Griffins are packing up. Lois is putting things in a bag. The killer, on paper, is in a police car. And the only reason the actual cover-up gets exposed is that Lois decides, before leaving, to walk over to Diane Simmons and check on her. Diane Simmons is the local news co-anchor. She has been in the show since the first season. She has spent the night standing around like everybody else, terrified, going through the same motions of trying to figure out who the killer is. Lois sits with her. Lois talks to her, woman to woman, about what it is going to be like having to anchor the news without Tom, now that Tom is going to prison. Diane is quiet. Lois keeps talking. And somewhere in the middle of that conversation, Lois realizes Diane is the killer. The reveal is one of the most carefully written reveals the show has ever done. Diane pulls a gun. She tells Lois the truth. The truth is that the entire night was a cover-up. Every detail of it. Every body. Every clue. Diane explains. She had been dating James Woods. She had broken up with him. She had been demoted at the news station because Tom Tucker, her co-anchor, had pushed for a younger replacement after she turned 40. Her career was ending. Her relationship was ending. Her life, in her own telling, was over. So she came up with a plan. She wanted James Woods dead, and she wanted Tom Tucker to take the fall for it. The plan was elaborate. She paid Priscilla to seduce James Woods and convince him to throw the dinner party. The whole born-again Christian story was something Diane had paid Priscilla to put in his head. The diary was real. The grudges were real. Every guest invited to that house had been chosen because they had a possible motive. The dinner party was, from Diane's side, a stage. It was a setup designed to give the police, the next morning, a long list of suspects, with Tom Tucker conveniently placed at the top because of his work history with her. The whole evening was a cover-up built in advance. Then, everything went wrong. The shot that was supposed to kill James Woods, Diane explains, was set up using a gun on a timer in the chair. chair. James Woods got up at the wrong time. Stephanie sat in his chair. The bullet meant for him hit her. The first death of the night was an accident from Diane's perspective. Her plan had a hole in it from minute one. So she improvised. She killed James Woods herself by stabbing him in the dark when the lights went out. That was the plan moving back on track. But Priscilla was a loose end. Priscilla knew the whole story. Priscilla had been paid to set the night up. So Diane killed Priscilla too and stuffed her body in the vent to make sure she could never tell anyone what she had been hired to do. That was cover-up number 2, layered on top of cover-up number 1. Then Muriel Goldman saw something. The episode is not entirely specific about what she saw, but Diane mentions it. Muriel had spotted something that would have given the killer away. So Muriel had to be killed too, to keep the truth buried. That was cover-up number 3. Then Derek Wilcox decided to go look for a phone signal alone. If Derek got through to the police before morning, the whole carefully constructed setup would fall apart. So Diane killed him with the Golden Globe, and then she planted the murder weapon under Tom Tucker's bed. That was cover-up number 4, and it was also the closing piece of the original frame job. Tom Tucker, by morning, would be the obvious killer. The Golden Globe was the proof. The plan, when Diane lays it out for Lois, sounds almost finished. The police have arrested Tom, the case is closed, the town is going home. If Lois had gone home with everybody else, the truth would have stayed buried for the rest of the show. Diane would have gotten her job back. Diane would have walked off the island with the same smile she came on with. The 4 people in the ground would have stayed in the ground. The only thing the plan did not account for was Lois being curious enough to check on her in the kitchen. So Diane improvises one more time. She decides to add Lois to the list. She takes Lois at gunpoint. She marches her out to the cliffs at the edge of the island. The plan is to shoot her and push her over, and to claim that Lois had been the killer all along, and that Diane had been forced to defend herself. Cover-up number 5, made up on the spot, designed to clean up the loose end of the only person who had figured the rest of it out. The reason that final cover-up does not work is that there is one person on the island Diane did not factor in. Stewie, the baby. Stewie is in a window of the mansion above the cliffs with a sniper rifle. Stewie shoots Diane in the back. Diane falls off the cliff. The episode ends with Stewie explaining calmly that nobody is allowed to kill Lois except him. That last line is meant to be funny, and it is, but it is also doing a strange piece of work. The official record of what happened on the island, the version that gets told to the police, never includes Stewie. Stewie pulled the trigger that ended the killer. The town never finds out a baby was the actual reason the case closed. That kill, the one Stewie did from the window, becomes its own quiet cover-up. It is a cover-up the audience is in on, that the Griffins are in on, but that no police officer in Quahog ever investigates. What makes this episode the centerpiece cover-up of the entire show is the scale. Every other cover-up so far in this list has involved one lie, one body, one letter, one door. This one is a chain. Diane built her plan as a cover-up of a cover-up of a cover-up. She killed James Woods to fix a broken plan. She killed Priscilla to cover up killing James Woods. She killed Muriel to cover up killing Priscilla. She killed Derek to cover up the entire chain. She framed Tom Tucker to put a final wrapper on the whole night. The murders were not 5 separate crimes. The murders were one long cover-up with 5 names on it. Each new body existed only because the previous body had been hidden imperfectly. The other thing this episode is honest about, in a way Family Guy normally is not, is the cost. The deaths in this episode stuck. Seth MacFarlane confirmed publicly that the episode was canon. Diane Simmons, Muriel Goldman, Priscilla, and Derek Wilcox are all dead from the moment this episode ends. They never come back. There are no later episodes that quietly reset them. James Woods is the only one the show eventually walks back, with a half-joke explanation in a later episode that paramedics revived him at a secret science lab built for celebrities. The other 4 are gone for good. That is the heaviest body count in any single Family Guy episode, and the episode earns that count because the writers were willing to let the cover-up actually work all the way to the cliffs before letting Lois pull at the loose thread. There is one detail buried in the final exchange that the show drops in casually and never picks back up. Lois, after Diane explains everything, asks one last question. She asks what happened to Stephanie's body. After Stephanie was killed in the dining room and the guests went outside to escape, the body disappeared. They came back in to find James Woods stabbed and Stephanie's body gone. Lois asks where the body went, and Diane, the woman who has just confessed to 4 murders and who has a gun pointed at Lois's head, looks confused. She says she has no idea. She says that part was was not her. The episode never tells the audience what happened to Stephanie. The body is never explained. It is the one piece of the puzzle Diane did not control. Somebody else, that night, in that house, did something the master plan had no record of. The show drops it in and lets it sit. It is the kind of detail that, if Family Guy were a different show, would carry into a later season as a long mystery. Family Guy, being Family Guy, never returned to it. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That dangling thread is the right way to bridge into what comes next, because if a side character can build a cover-up elaborate enough to nearly murder 5 people and frame a 6th, the question worth asking is what the main characters are capable of when they decide to try. The most extreme cover-up the show has ever built around its own family is not from a side villain at all. It is from one of the 4 faces in the opening credits. The character is 1 year old. The plan involves a boat, a machine gun, and a year of patient silence while his own father is tried for the murder he committed. The plan is so close to perfect that the only way the truth comes out is that the victim, against all odds, walks back into the room alive. Section 7. Stewie's Perfect Murder. The episode is called Stewie Kills Lois. It is the 4th episode of season 6. There is a second part called Lois Kills Stewie. That is the 5th episode. The 2 episodes ran back to back on November 4th, 2007. They are billed as the 100th episode of Family Guy. The writers knew the milestone was coming. Seth MacFarlane gave interviews in the days before the episodes aired saying there would be a death in the 100th. Most fans assumed it was a tease. Most fans assumed it was a fake out. Most fans were wrong about exactly how seriously the show was about to take the joke that had been hanging over Stewie's head since the very first episode of the series. Stewie has wanted to kill Lois since season 1. The show has played it as a running gag for years. Stewie talks about killing his mother. Stewie monologues about killing his mother. Stewie builds weapons designed to kill his mother. The audience laughs because nothing ever happens. Stewie is a baby. Babies do not actually murder anybody. The threat is theater. The threat is decoration. The threat is, by season 6, one of the longest running setups without a punchline in the entire show. The 100th episode is the punchline. The setup is small in the way Family Guy setups always look small before they snap. Lois has a birthday. Brian, as a gift, gives her 2 tickets for a luxury cruise. She assumes the second ticket is for Peter. She and Peter pack their bags. They leave for the boat. They do not take Stewie. Stewie is left at home with the rest of the family, and the second the front door closes, he announces to Brian that he has decided to follow through. He is going to do it this time. He is going to kill Lois. Brian does what Brian has done 100 times before in 100 other episodes. He laughs at him. He tells Stewie he never follows through. He calls his bluff. That is the line Stewie was waiting for. Brian saying that out loud is what makes Stewie commit. The whole long-running joke of the show, the bit about Stewie being all talk, gets used by Stewie himself as fuel. Brian thinks he is harmless. Brian has always thought he is harmless. The only way to prove Brian wrong is to actually do it, so Stewie gets a speedboat. The episode does not waste time on how a 1-year-old rents a speedboat. The show is past explaining things like that by season 6. He just has one. He gets out on the water. He catches up to the cruise ship. He climbs aboard. Lois has just had a fight with Peter on the deck. She is alone, looking out at the ocean, trying to calm herself down. Stewie walks up behind her. He pulls out a machine gun. He calls her name. She turns around. She sees him. She has time to say one short, shocked word. He opens fire. The animation does not flinch. The bullets hit her chest. She staggers backward. She goes over the railing. She falls into the dark ocean. The show holds the shot of her body sinking into the water. There is no quick cutaway. There is no joke to break the moment. The 100th episode of Family Guy contains, on screen, the killing of one of its 4 lead characters by another of its 4 lead characters. Then, the show pivots into what makes the 100th episode actually special. The show pivots into the cover-up. A year passes. The episode skips ahead. The Griffin household has reorganized itself around the assumption that Lois is gone. Peter is dating other women. Chris has been told that Lois is at a long-term health spa because the family does not think he can handle the truth. Meg, in Stewie's words, has really begun to flourish. The show is being honest about the kind of family the Griffins are. The family has moved on. The mother is gone, presumed dead at sea. The official story is an accident on the cruise. The official story is the only story anyone is telling. Stewie has been operating for a full year inside the official story. He has spent every day of those 12 months acting like a baby who lost his mom. He has cried at the right moments. He has been quiet at the right moments. He has watched his family rearrange itself around an absence he created, and he has not slipped once. The cover-up, on Stewie's side, is not a single act. It is a year of acting. It is 365 days of remembering to play the part heart of a grieving child while sitting on top of a secret the size of murder. The cover-up almost holds. It almost holds completely. The thing that breaks it is the smallest possible mistake. Brian finds a receipt. He finds it in Stewie's room. The receipt is for the rental of a speedboat. The date on the receipt is the same date Lois disappeared.
Brian, who is the only person in the house with the actual brains to put two and two together, brings the receipt to Stewie. He asks Stewie about it. Stewie, for the first time in a year, says one sentence too many. Brian had said something about Lois's death being an accident. Stewie corrects him. He says, casually, that the accident was what everyone was led to believe. The line lands. Brian sees the receipt and the sentence next to each other. Brian realizes, all at once, that Stewie actually did it. Stewie now has a second cover-up to manage. The first cover-up was about hiding the murder from the world. The second cover-up is about hiding the evidence from Brian. Stewie panics. He goes home and decides he has to get rid of everything. The receipt, the gun, the drawings he had made of Lois being killed in different ways. He had been keeping them in his room as souvenirs. Brian's discovery makes them too dangerous to keep. Stewie throws all of it in the trash. That is where the cover-up starts to fall apart in a way Stewie cannot see. Joe, Cleveland, and Quagmire are out doing something normal in the neighborhood. They go through the Griffin's trash. The show plays it as a coincidence. They find the gun, they find the drawings, they find the receipt, and they look at the drawings, and the drawings are graphic. They show Lois being shot. They show Lois being killed. The three of them piece it together with the only logic available to them. Earlier in the episode, at the bar, Peter had mentioned to them that he had taken out a life insurance policy on Lois. He had mentioned it casually. He had mentioned that during the fight on the cruise, he had briefly wished she was dead. He had mentioned that the insurance had finally paid out. So now there is a life insurance policy. There is a recorded wish for the death. There are drawings of the death. There is a gun. The three of them do the math. They conclude Peter is the killer. They report him. Peter gets arrested. This is the part of the episode that turns it from a stunt into something heavier. Stewie, the actual killer, is now watching his own father get charged with the murder he committed. Peter goes to trial. The trial is real. The episode does not skip past it. The prosecutor walks Peter through every piece of evidence. Every line of his testimony makes him look guiltier. Peter, being Peter, says things on the stand that any lawyer would beg him not to say. He confirms that he wished Lois was dead during the fight. He confirms that he benefited financially from her disappearance. He confirms everything the prosecution needs. Stewie watches this happen and says nothing. That silence is the heart of the cover-up. The first cover-up was the murder itself. The second cover-up was the year of acting normal. The third cover-up, the worst one, is letting his own father go to prison for it. Stewie, sitting in the courtroom in his little baby chair, has every chance in the world to stand up and say that he did it. He could end the trial in a sentence. He could save his father with one truth. He chooses every minute the trial is running to let it continue. He prefers his father in jail to himself in jail. The show is making a real claim about who Stewie is. Stewie is a person who would let his own father be sentenced to life in prison rather than confess. The jury finds Peter guilty, first-degree murder. The judge prepares to sentence him to life. There is no last-minute Brian intervention. There is no Stewie change of heart. The cover-up has worked. Peter is going to prison. The actual killer is going to walk out of the courtroom with a juice box. And then, in the second-to-last beat of the first episode, the door of the courtroom opens. Lois walks in. She is alive. The boat shooting did not kill her. She had survived the fall. She had been pulled out of the water by a merman, in the show's own explanation, and had gotten amnesia. She had wandered the country for a year, ended up working as a counselor at a fat camp in North Carolina, and recovered her memory only after a separate accident hit her on the head. She had remembered everything. She had come home. The shock that her son tried to kill her was something she had to figure out how to tell to a courtroom that was about to send her husband away for it. Peter is freed. Lois names Stewie. Stewie is exposed. The first half of the two-parter ends on a freeze frame of Lois pointing at her own one-year-old as the would-be murderer. The second part, Lois kills Stewie, plays out as the consequence of the cover-up falling apart. Stewie escapes. Stewie attempts to take over the world. The episode is bigger and louder than the first one, and it includes a long action sequence and a lot of jokes about how a baby could possibly run a global takeover. But underneath it, the cover-up is still the engine. Stewie is on the run because the cover-up failed. Lois is hunting him because the cover-up failed. Everything that happens in the second episode is a direct consequence of one bad receipt and one bad sentence in a kitchen. And then the show does the thing that has frustrated some fans for almost 20 years. The whole two-parter, in its final minutes, gets revealed to be a simulation.
simulation. Stewie has been running a computer model in his lab the entire time. The model was meant to predict, in detail, how a real attempt to kill Lois would actually go. Brian had told him at the start that he never follows through. Stewie wanted to know, before he tried, whether following through would actually work. The simulation was the answer. The simulation said no. The simulation showed him that he would get caught, that his cover-up would hold for 364 days and break on day 365, that his father would nearly take the fall, and that his mother would survive and walk into a courtroom and end him.
So Stewie, in the present, decides not to do it. He climbs out of the simulation chair. He tells Brian things did not work out so well. He says he is not ready yet. The simulation gets discarded. The status quo is restored. People sometimes complain about that ending as a cheat. The complaint misses what the simulation actually proves. The simulation is not a fake out. The simulation is the show being honest about the kind of person Stewie is. He did not refuse to murder his mother for moral reasons. He did not refuse because he loves her. He refused because the math did not work out in his favor. The simulation was a planning document. The simulation was a baby with a master plan, running the numbers on a cover-up so complete that he was willing, in the model, to let his own father go to prison rather than confess. And the only reason he did not start the real version is that the model told him he would lose by one receipt. That is a different kind of cover-up than the ones the show has done before. The pizza cover-up, the Stewie head cover-up, the cat, the asylum, the murder of Jeff, the island full of dead bodies. All of those were cover-ups happening in real time, made by people reacting to what had just gone wrong. The Stewie 100th episode cover-up is the only one that was rehearsed. It was modeled. It was planned in advance, broken on purpose, and shelved for next time. The episode ends with Stewie putting the plan back on the shelf for later. He says it out loud. He says the plan will have to wait. He does not say he will not try again. He says he is not ready yet. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That last detail is the bridge into what comes next. Because if the show is willing to spend its 100th episode building a cover-up that the killer himself rejects only because the math is wrong, the next question is what happens when the show kills off a different main character for real, with no simulation, and asks the audience to accept the loss as permanent. The character that gets killed a few seasons later is not the mother, it is not the baby, it is the dog. The death is sudden, the death is on screen. The family replaces him within one episode. And the cover-up that follows is a cover-up the show was forced to perform on itself, in the editing room, after the audience refused to play along with the plan. Section 8. Brian's death and the cover-up about the cover-up. The episode is called Life of Brian. It is the 6th episode of season 12. It first aired on November 24th, 2013. The episode that completes the arc is called Christmas Guy. It is the 8th episode of the same season. It first aired on December 15th, 2013. Together, these two episodes form the most public cover-up in the history of Family Guy. The cover-up is not inside the show. The cover-up is the show. It is the story of a death that was meant to be permanent, a replacement that was meant to be permanent, and a backtrack the writers were forced to perform on themselves 3 weeks later because the audience refused to allow the plan to stand. The setup, on screen, is short and brutal. Brian and Stewie are playing street hockey outside the Griffin house. They have been playing it for years. The puck rolls into the road. Brian goes after it. A car comes out of nowhere. The car hits Brian. Brian goes down. The animation does not soften the impact. He is in the road. He is bleeding. The family runs out of the house. They gather around him. Stewie holds him. Brian, in his final moments, gets a real death scene. He thanks the family. He tells them he loves them. He says goodbye. He dies on the street in the arms of his best friend in the middle of a season that had given no warning that any of this was coming. Stewie, in the immediate aftermath, has the obvious idea that the rest of the show has trained him to have. He tries to use his time machine to go back and save Brian. The episode does not let him. The time machine is broken. The parts he needs to fix it cannot be sourced because his usual supplier was killed for reasons the show explains in a quick joke about a cartoon controversy. The episode shuts every door. There is no way back. Brian is gone. The family holds a funeral. The family grieves. And then, less than an act later, the family does what every Family Guy family always does when something is broken in their lives. They replace it. Lois decides the best thing for the family is to get a new dog. They go to a pet shop.
They pick out an Italian dog named Vinny. Vinny is voiced by Tony Sirico, the actor best known for The Sopranos. Vinny is a smooth-talking, friendly, unbothered dog who slides into the Griffin house and starts ingratiating himself with the family from the second he walks through the door. He cooks dinner, he charms Peter, he becomes the new fourth member of the bar group. By the end of the episode, Vinny has bonded with Stewie. He sits next to Stewie's bed. He tells Stewie a story about losing his own previous owner. He earns his place. The episode ends. Brian is buried. Vinny is in the opening credits position next to Peter on the couch. The family has moved on inside a single episode. That is the in-show cover-up. The cover-up is the speed of it. The cover-up is the family agreeing, almost without discussion, that the answer to losing Brian is to fill the chair he used to sit in. The next episode of the show, called Into Harmony's Way, the 7th episode of the season, opens with the family already living their normal lives with Vinny in them. There is no extended grieving. There is no period of mourning. The dog is gone. There is a new dog. Life continues. The Griffins, in their own house, have performed the same kind of fast emotional concealment they have always performed. Brian is not buried in the ground in the way Albert the war hero is buried in the ground. Brian is buried in the rhythm of the show. He is buried by the speed at which the next episode begins. That alone would have been a cover-up worth talking about. The Griffins moving past their own dog in less than a week of episode time. The way Lois suggests the new pet like she is suggesting a new vacuum cleaner. The way Peter brings Vinny to the bar like nothing important has happened. The way the show treats grief as a thing that can be solved by acquiring a replacement. All of it would have been enough. Then the audience refused to play along. The reaction in the real world was immediate and large. Within hours of Life of Brian airing, an online petition started circulating asking for Brian to be brought back. Tens of thousands of signatures. Then more. Then more. The fans were not laughing. The fans were not amused. The writer of the episode, Alex Carter, has spoken publicly in DVD commentary about getting death threats from angry viewers in the days after the episode aired. The writer's room, by their own account, started getting nervous. Fox started getting nervous. The plan, which had been to kill Brian, replace him with Vinny, and let the season play out with a new dog, started looking like a plan that the network was not going to let happen. This is where the second cover-up begins. The bigger one. The one that the writers had to perform on themselves. The original season 12, by the staff's own admission and commentary, was supposed to end with Brian still dead. Vinny was supposed to be permanent. The arc was supposed to last the full season. The episodes after Life of Brian were already being made. The animation was already in motion. The plan was, in production terms, locked in. The crew has talked about how far the original Christmas episode got before they had to rewrite it. The original ending of Christmas Guy, the 8th episode of the season, was completely different from the version that aired. The original ending had Brian staying dead. Vinny was going to remain the family dog through the end of the season at minimum, and possibly beyond. The reversal happened under pressure. The writers, in the public version of the story, tell it as a creative decision. They wanted to make a point about not taking your loved ones for granted. The DVD commentary tells a different story. The DVD commentary says they were forced. Fox, looking at the petition numbers, looking at the fan reaction, looking at the way the show was suddenly trending in the wrong direction, made the call. Brian had to come back. The Christmas episode had to be rewritten. The original ending had to be scrapped. The animation that had already been completed had to be either redone or reused. There was not enough time to polish the new version the way the staff wanted. Anyone who watches Christmas Guy carefully can see that the rewritten parts of the episode have a slightly different animation quality than the rest. The transitions are slightly less clean. The timing of certain scenes feels rushed. The fingerprints of a last-minute rewrite are visible on the finished product. The cleanest piece of evidence that the original plan existed is on the Season 11 DVD release. The DVD includes a bonus feature labeled Christmas Guy, the alternate ending. The alternate ending shows what the episode was supposed to look like before the rewrite. It is, in production terms, a fossil. It is a record of the version of the show that was scrapped because the audience did not buy it. The DVD still includes the fossil, sitting in the bonus features, almost like an apology. Christmas Guy itself is the reversal episode, the episode that aired, the episode that fans watched. The plot is structured around the idea that Stewie misses Brian so badly that he becomes determined to get him back. He spots his own past self in a mall, time traveling to buy a Christmas present. He realizes that his past self has the device he needs. He gets the device. He uses it to go back in time, to the day Brian dies, and stops the car from hitting him. Brian is saved. The timeline resets. The current Stewie fades from existence because he has changed his own past. The Brian who is alive at the end of the episode is the same Brian the audience had always known. Vinny is gone in the new timeline because the family never needed a new dog. The hockey puck is the only object that that registers any of this happened. The episode was reviewed positively. The audience was happy, the petition was satisfied, the fans got what they wanted, and the official record of the show from that point on is that Brian Griffin was never permanently killed. Brian Griffin was always going to come back. The death was always going to be undone. The death was, in the writer's public version of the story, a planned narrative beat designed to pay off in Christmas Sky. The story stuck. The story is, in most casual fan retellings, the only version that exists. The original plan, the one in the bonus features, sits in the corner of the DVD case as the only physical record that the public version is not the whole truth. That is the actual cover-up. Not the death of Brian, not the replacement with Vinny, not the family moving on too fast inside the show. The cover-up is the rewriting, after the fact, of what the show was trying to do. The cover-up is the reframing of a forced reversal as an artistic choice. The cover-up is the staff sitting on the DVD commentary and explaining to a small audience that bothers to listen what really happened, while the larger audience watches the public version where everything was always part of the plan. There is something almost circular about this whole arc as a cover-up. Inside the episodes, the Griffin family rushes to bury its grief by acquiring a new dog. Outside the episodes, the writers rush to bury their own creative decision by acquiring a new explanation for why they made it. Both groups, the family on-screen and the staff off-screen, ended up performing the same maneuver. Something painful happened. The painful thing was inconvenient. The painful thing was concealed by replacing it with a smoother version. The Griffins replaced Brian with Vinny. The writers replaced the Vinny plan with the time travel rescue. The audience, in both cases, was given a clean ending. The mess, in both cases, was tucked into a place most people would never look. The show's later seasons have largely followed the public version of the story. Brian appears in nearly every subsequent episode. Vinny is referenced occasionally as a dog the family briefly had. There is one fan-developed episode and various non-canon stories that explore what Brian might have been doing during the time he was officially dead, but the official show never seriously revisits the gap. The two episodes between Life of Brian and Christmas Sky, the ones where Vinny was the family dog, are the only two episodes in the show's run that take place inside the alternate timeline. They exist. They are watchable. They are the receipts of a cover-up that never quite went away, in the same way that the speedboat receipt in Stewie's room was the receipt that broke the simulation in the 100th episode. What makes this cover-up specific is that it crosses the line between fiction and production. Every other cover-up in this list lives entirely inside the show. The Griffins hid a pizza guy, hid a baby's injury, hid a war hero, hid a cat, hid a murder, framed an island, ran a simulation. All of those events happen inside the world of the show. All of those events are, in storytelling terms, made up. The Brian arc is the only one where the fictional cover-up and the real cover-up ran in parallel. The family in the show was hiding from grief. The staff outside the show was hiding from a creative misstep. The two acts of concealment landed in the same final episode and the same final scene. When Brian, in Christmas Sky, walks back through the front door, he is walking back into both the family that did not save him and the production that almost did not bring him back. The Brian death arc is also the only major Family Guy cover-up that the show has been more or less honest about, eventually, on the record. The DVD commentary on Christmas Sky is the document. The staff sit there and admit, on tape, what really happened. They admit the original plan. They admit the pressure. They admit the rewrite. They admit the death threats sent to Alex Carter. They admit, in pieces, that the public version of the story is a polished job. The honesty is buried in the bonus features of a physical disc that fewer and fewer people own. The polished job is the version that lives on streaming services and in the cultural memory of casual viewers. Both versions are there. Most people only ever see one. That is one of the cleanest illustrations of how cover-ups work in real life, not just in cartoons. The truth does not always disappear. The truth often sits in plain sight, in a place very few people are going to bother going. The DVD commentary is not classified. The DVD commentary is not hidden. Anyone with the Season 11 DVD can hear the staff explain it. The cover-up is not that the truth is invisible. The cover-up is that the louder version is easier to access. And the quieter version requires effort. The audience that wants the clean story gets the clean story. The audience that wants the messy story has to dig. Inside the show, the Griffins are good at making sure nobody digs. The pizza guy goes in the sewer. The war hero goes in the parking lot. The baby goes in a cowboy hat. The cat goes nowhere anyone will check. Brian, in the new timeline, is alive, and the dog who took his place is gone. Outside the show, the writers are good at making sure nobody digs there either. either. The DVD commentary exists, but the streaming version of the episodes does not include it. The alternate ending exists, but it is a bonus feature, not a part of the canon. The Griffins and the writers have, across both layers, learned the same lesson the show keeps teaching its characters. If the louder story is good enough, the quieter story does not need to be told. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing.
It helps the channel tremendously.
That last point is the bridge into what comes next, because the cleanest example of an in-show cover-up that everybody pretends ended with a clean reset, even though it never actually did, is not about a dog. It is not about a baby. It is about a marriage. The marriage is between Peter and Lois. The third party is a former president of the United States. The infidelity is real. The cover-ups, plural, run in opposite directions across the same episode. By the time the credits roll, there is no piece of trust in that household that has not been hidden from another piece of trust in that household. And the show, true to itself, plays the whole thing as a happy ending. Section 9. Bill Clinton, Lois, and the marriage almost burned down. The episode is called Bill and Peter's Bogus Journey. It is the 13th episode of Season 5. It first aired on March 11th, 2007. The title is a play on the old movie Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. The plot, on the surface, is one of the show's standard celebrity meets Peter setups. A famous person rolls into Quahog, Peter befriends the famous person makes Peter's life better in some surface level way, and worse in every deeper way. By the end of the episode, the friendship blows up and the family resets. The famous person, in this case, is former President Bill Clinton. The reset, in this case, is a marriage that should not have survived the night. And the only reason the marriage does survive is because every single person in it agrees, silently, to bury the things they have done from each other. The setup is small. Peter is feeling old. He throws his back out trying to lift Bill Clinton's broken down limousine off the road by hand outside the Griffin house. He ends up in the hospital. Bill Clinton, the actual former president in the show's universe, comes to visit him to say thank you. The two become friends. Bill takes Peter out. Bill makes Peter feel young again. They party. They break the law a few times. They steal a pig from a farm. They smoke. They have a great time. Lois sees Peter coming home a wreck and decides Bill is a bad influence. She tells Peter to stop hanging out with him. Peter refuses. Lois decides she will go talk to Bill herself. That is the setup of the first cover-up. Lois drives over to Bill's hotel room. She knocks on the door. The intent on her end is straightforward. She is going to ask the former president to leave her husband alone. The episode does not show what Bill says to her. The show does the thing it always does in this kind of moment, which is cut to the punchline. The next scene is Lois in bed with him. The deed is done. She has slept with Bill Clinton. The show does not even play her seduction as a long sequence. The cut is brutal. She walks in to confront him. She walks out having committed adultery. She is, almost immediately, horrified by what she has done. The line the show gives her, paraphrased, is the apology of someone who cannot believe she let it happen. She tries to justify it to herself by listing the president's policy achievements. She mentions the longest economic expansion in United States history. She mentions the welfare reduction numbers. The show is making fun of her for grasping at any straw she can find to make the betrayal feel less personal. The truth is that she has slept with another man, hours after telling her husband to stay away from him, and she now has to figure out what to do with that information. This is where the first cover-up begins. Lois decides, in the immediate aftermath, that she is going to hide it from Peter. The whole reason she went to Bill's room in the first place was to protect her marriage. The whole reason she is now scared is that she has just done the one thing that could end it. So the plan, briefly, is concealment. She is going to go home, put on a normal face, and never tell him. The plan does not survive the next scene. Peter walks in. The show is not subtle about how he finds out. He walks in and sees them in bed together. The show is not interested in playing the long-running fake-out where the husband is suspicious for 10 minutes before confronting his wife. The show just shows him, immediately, the full picture. The first cover-up ends before it really starts. Lois cannot hide what Peter has already seen with his own eyes. Peter is devastated. The episode plays this part straight in a way Family Guy usually does not. He is genuinely hurt. He leaves the house. He moves into Quagmire's place for the night. He is wrecked. The marriage in the show's universe is in real trouble. The first cover-up has already failed. The second cover-up is what Lois decides to do next. Lois proposes the most strange idea this episode contains, and the writers, by the public account of their own writers' room discussions, debated this part of the script extensively. Lois decides that the way to fix the imbalance in the marriage is to let Peter even the score. She tells Peter, plainly, that the only way she can think of to restore the marriage is for him to sleep with someone else too. Then they will be even. Then it will cancel out. Then they can move on. This is, in cover-up terms, the second move. The first cover-up was Lois trying to hide hide the affair. The second cover-up is Lois trying to hide the imbalance the affair created. The plan is not to undo the affair. The plan is to balance it with another affair on the other side of the marriage, so the books match. The lie they will tell themselves and each other after both affairs are complete is that the marriage never really got broken. There was just a small mistake on each side, and now it is fixed. The truth would be that there have now been 2 infidelities instead of 1. The new lie is that 2 infidelities equals 0 infidelities. Peter, in his hurt, agrees. He says yes. He says he will do it. The choice he makes about who to do it with is, on its own, one of the strangest character moments in the show's run. Peter decides to even the score by sleeping with Lois's mother, Babs Pewterschmidt, his own mother-in-law. The show has Babs casually agree to it on the grounds that her marriage to Carter is so bad, she is willing to do almost anything to spite him. The scene is built like a bedroom comedy. The two of them are alone in her room. He almost goes through with it. And then, at the last second, he stops. He cannot do it. He tells Babs he cannot cheat on Lois, even when Lois has given him permission to. He goes home. That is the third cover-up, and it is the one that gets the least attention. The fact that Peter went to his own mother-in-law's bedroom and almost slept with her is something he never tells Lois about. The plan, on Lois's side, was that she was supposed to be calmed down by knowing Peter had done something equivalent. Peter does not actually do the thing, so instead of telling her he could not go through with it, he just goes home and gives the impression that the matter is handled. He lets her believe that the deed is done in some form. The truth, which he never reports, is that he was inches from sleeping with her mother. Lois never finds out. The mother of the woman he is married to is now a person he has secretly almost been to bed with, and the wife will go the rest of the show without ever knowing. Then comes the fourth cover-up. The one the episode is, in its own dark way, most famous for. Peter decides that to put the whole mess to rest, he should go talk to Bill Clinton man to man. The marriage is back on. The score is, in his head, even. He just needs to clear the air with the man who started the whole thing. He goes to Bill's hotel room. He knocks. The door opens. The next thing the audience sees is Peter in bed with Bill. The show does the same brutal cut it did with Lois. Peter walks in to have a serious conversation with the former president. The next scene is Peter, naked, in the same bed, telling Bill in a stunned voice that he is really good at this. Bill has, in the universe of this episode, seduced both of them inside the same 24 hours. The show treats it as the punchline of the episode. The line lands, the scene ends, and the audience has just been told, in the cleanest possible way, that Peter has now slept with someone outside his marriage too. Lois never finds out about that either. This is the layered part of the cover-up. Lois proposed a balanced score. The plan was for Peter to sleep with someone else, and then for the two of them to call it even. Peter, by the actual events of the episode, does sleep with someone else. He sleeps with Bill Clinton. The score, by the rules Lois herself laid out, is now actually balanced. But Peter never tells her this is what happened. He lets her go on believing that he chose not to even the score, and that her own confession is therefore the larger sin between them. The truth, which lives only inside Peter's head, is that her affair and his affair are now equally weighted, and that Bill Clinton is the third party in both of them. Peter chooses to keep that information to himself. So now consider what is sitting underneath this marriage at the end of the episode. Lois has slept with Bill Clinton, and she knows Peter knows. That is the only piece of information shared between them. Underneath that, Peter almost slept with her mother, and she does not know. Underneath that, Peter actually slept with the same man Lois slept with, and she does not know. The marriage is reset, on the surface, to where it was before. The show plays the final scenes as a forgiveness arc. The two of them are sitting on the couch together by the end. The audience is invited to feel that the family unit is intact. The family unit is intact. The trust is gone. 3 different acts of concealment are sitting under the floorboards of the household, and only one of them is shared between the 2 adults in it. What makes this cover-up specific is that it is the only cover-up in this list that exists entirely between 2 people who supposedly love each other. The pizza cover-up was a household against the wife. The Stewie head cover-up was a household against the wife. The asylum cover-up was a friend group against the law. The cat cover-up was a friend against another friend. The Brenda Q cover-up was 3 men against a grieving woman. The island cover-up was 1 woman against an entire town. The 100th episode cover cover-up was a baby against everyone. The Brian arc was the writers against the audience. Bill and Peter's bogus journey is the only cover-up that is two halves of a marriage, each hiding pieces of the same night from each other, while sitting in the same kitchen the next morning. The show plays the final beats as a happy resolution. There is no scene where Lois finds out about Peter and Bill. There is no scene where Peter admits the Babs incident. The episode ends with the marriage stitched back together by a thread. The thread, if anyone in the house pulled on it, would unravel the entire thing. The Griffins, for the rest of the show, never pull on it. By the next episode, the affair is referenced briefly and then dropped. By the season after, it has effectively never happened. By season 10 and onward, the show treats Peter and Lois as a normal married couple, the way it has always treated them, with no acknowledgement that the foundation of their marriage includes an evening neither of them ever fully cleaned up. Family Guy, as a show, has a long and well-documented habit of pretending its episodes do not connect. Continuity in the series is loose by design. Things happen, things resolve, the next episode resets the clock. The Bill and Peter's bogus journey arc fits cleanly inside that pattern. The episode happened. The events of the episode are still canon. The show simply moves on, as if the consequences of those events were paid in full inside the runtime. The fans, mostly, agree to do the same. The episode gets brought up in lists of weird Peter moments and in jokes about Bill Clinton's character on the show. The deeper question of what this episode actually says about the marriage at the center of the series rarely gets discussed. The Parents Television Council, an outside watchdog group, called this episode the worst television show of its broadcast week when it aired. The show received complaints from people in New Orleans for an unrelated joke in the same episode about Hurricane Katrina. The press around the episode focused on the celebrity casting, the Bill Clinton policy references, and the controversy. The actual cover-up at the heart of the marriage barely got mentioned in any of the coverage at the time. The episode, even at the moment of its first broadcast, was already engaged in a kind of public concealment. It was hiding the seriousness of what it had just done by being loud about other things. That is the pattern this cover-up reveals about the show as a whole. Family Guy uses noise to hide weight. The cutaways, the celebrity gags, the punchlines stacked on punchlines, all of them serve, partly, as cover for the slower and stranger things the show is willing to do underneath. The Lois affair would be, in any other sitcom, a season-defining event. In Family Guy, it is the B context of an episode whose A-plot is technically about Peter learning to stop being scared of getting older. The marriage absorbs the affair the way the family absorbs Stewie's head injury, the way the friends absorb the war hero's burial, the way Quagmire absorbs the door in his face. Things happen. Things get hidden. The next episode begins. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. That last detail is the bridge into what comes last. Because every cover-up in this list, from the pizza guy to the war hero, to the murder of Jeff, to the island full of bodies, to the simulation in Stewie's lab, to the rewriting of Brian's death, to the ledger of secrets in the Griffin marriage, has been a cover-up happening on screen inside the world of the show. There is one more layer. There is the layer of the things the show itself was not allowed to show. The episodes Fox refused to air. The scenes pulled from reruns and DVDs after real-world tragedies. The jokes that disappeared between the original broadcast and the rerun. The whole episodes that disappeared between production and the public. The Griffins are not the only ones who have been covering things up for the last 25 years. The network has been doing the same thing the entire time, and the audience has, mostly, never been told. Section 10. The cover-ups. Fox doesn't want you to see. Every cover-up so far in this video has happened inside the show. The pizza guy on the toilet, the baby with the cracked skull, the war hero in the parking lot, the cat in the trash, the fiancé in the woods, the island full of bodies, the 100th episode simulation, the dog who was almost permanently dead, the marriage with 3 secrets buried under the kitchen floor. This last section is about the cover-ups the audience was never allowed to see at all. Family Guy has been on the air since 1999. In that time, Fox has refused to air at least one full episode of the series in the United States. The network has pulled episodes off the schedule for years. The network has cut entire scenes after real-world events made them uncomfortable. The network has, in coordination with the producers, asked other networks to honor their bans. Fox is, in the most literal sense, the editor of the show as much as Seth MacFarlane is. And the choices the network has made about what to keep and what to bury are choices the average viewer has no idea were ever made. The cleanest example is an episode called Partial Terms of Endearment. It is the 21st episode of season 8. It was finished. It was animated. scripted, it was scored, it was ready to air. Fox refused. The episode has, as of this video, never been broadcast on American television. It aired in the United Kingdom on June 20th, 2010. It has been on DVD, it has been on Blu-ray. The show's American audience has been blocked from watching it on the platform the show actually airs on for the entire 15 years since it was finished. The reason is the plot. The episode is about abortion. Lois agrees to be a surrogate mother for an old college friend. The friend and her husband, the biological parents, die in a car accident while Lois is pregnant. Lois has to choose between carrying the child to term or ending the pregnancy. The episode treats the choice seriously. It picks a side, which is rare for the show. Fox, in the public statement made by Kevin Riley, the network's then president of entertainment, said the decision came down to advertiser concerns. The producers asked Adult Swim if they would air it. Fox asked Adult Swim not to. Adult Swim agreed. When Family Guy launched on Disney's international streaming service, Disney left the episode off the platform too. The episode exists. The episode is finished. The episode has aired on television, just not in the country where the show is made. The show's other officially banned episode is called When You Wish Upon a Weinstein. It is the 22nd episode of season 3. It was supposed to air in 2000. Fox held it back. The reason given was concern that the episode could be received as anti-Semitic. The episode is a satire of anti-Semitism. Adult Swim eventually aired it in 2003. Fox followed in 2004. The Coverup, in this case, ended. But it lasted 4 years. 4 years during which the show had finished making an episode and the network had decided the audience was not ready to see it. The third major banned episode is called Turban Cowboy. It is the 15th episode of season 11. It first aired on March 17th, 2013. There is a cutaway gag where Peter is shown driving his car through the runners of the Boston Marathon. The cutaway lasted a few seconds. It was broadcast normally. On April 15th, 2013, less than 1 month after the episode aired,
2 real bombs went off at the actual Boston Marathon. The bombing killed 3 people on the day. It injured hundreds. Fox pulled Turban Cowboy from its website immediately. Hulu pulled it. The episode was removed from rerun rotation. There was no public announcement. The episode just disappeared. For roughly 9 years, it could not be watched on any standard streaming or rerun platform in the United States. It returned to Hulu in September of 2022, almost a decade after the bombing. The episode was not edited. The cutaway was not removed. The episode was simply made hard to find. The same thing happened, on a smaller scale, with Road to Rhode Island. It is the 13th episode of season 2. It first aired on May 30th, 2000. There is a scene where Stewie distracts airport security with a song while sneaking weapons through. After he gets through, the camera pans to Osama bin Laden in the same security line, using the same trick. The episode aired more than a year before September 11th, 2001. After the attacks, Fox quietly cut the scene. It was removed from rerun versions. It was removed from the season 2 DVD release. For most viewers who came to the show after 2001, the episode they watched was a version that did not contain the scene. Most never knew anything was missing. A similar thing happened to a joke in the 5th episode of season 1 called A Hero Sits Next Door. The episode includes a quick gag where a young boy walks out of a store with a JFK Pez candy dispenser. A stray bullet hits the dispenser and breaks it. The boy then pulls out a backup Bobby Kennedy Pez dispenser. The joke is about how often the Kennedy family has been targeted by gun violence. Seth MacFarlane himself, in a 2012 interview with Entertainment Weekly, said the joke was one he regretted making. It was removed from the American DVD release. It was removed from many rerun broadcasts. The episode is still in circulation. The Pez dispenser scene is just absent from the version most viewers see. There are smaller cuts everywhere. There is a scene in Deep Throats where Peter and Lois are nude on the couch instead of wearing underwear. The Fox version covers them up. The DVD does not. There are dozens of cuts to lines, gags, and frames that move around between the broadcast version, the streaming version, the DVD version, and the unrated version. The show that exists on Hulu is not the same show that aired on Fox. The show that aired on Fox is not the same show that came out on DVD. The audience watching a Family Guy episode is, on any given platform, watching one of several edits, often without knowing. That is the layer of cover-up nobody on screen ever talks about. The Griffins hide the pizza guy in a sewer. The writers hide alternate endings in DVD bonus features. The network hides whole episodes in vaults overseas, behind purchase walls, behind silent removals from rerun rotation. Each layer is doing the same thing. Each layer is choosing what the audience gets to see, and choosing it in ways that very few people in the audience are aware of. What this last section reveals, taken with everything that came before, is that the line between what happens inside
inside the show and what happens to the show is thinner than most fans realize. The Griffin family, on screen, has spent 25 years burying things. The same 25 years the show itself has been buried in pieces, in different ways,
by the network that airs it. The pattern is consistent. Something happens. The thing creates a problem. The problem is solved by concealment instead of confrontation. The audience is left with a cleaner version of the truth than the one that actually existed. The Griffins have always been honest, in their dishonesty, about who they are. They will lie to a wife about a pizza. They will hide a baby's wound for months. They will bury a war hero in a parking lot. They will let a man pay them a reward for the news that they killed his cat. They will write a forged goodbye letter to a grieving sister. They will frame a town. They will simulate a perfect murder. They will replace a dead dog the same week he died. They will sit on 3 secrets in a single marriage. The thing the show has not always told its audience is that the people making the show have, on a different scale, been doing the same thing. The Pez dispenser scene was made and then made to disappear. The Osama bin Laden gag was made and then made to disappear. The Boston Marathon cutaway was made and then made to disappear for nearly a decade. The abortion episode was made and then made to disappear from the country where it was made. The Brian death plan was made and then rewritten under fan pressure and reframed in interviews as something it never quite was. The Griffins survive on people not looking. The network survives on people not looking. The producers, when they need to, survive on people not looking. The bodies stay buried because nobody walks into the parking lot with a shovel. The episodes stay missing because nobody clicks past the search results to ask why. The truth does not have to be destroyed. The truth just has to be quieter than the version everyone wants to believe. That is the show. The Griffins keep their secrets. The network keeps its secrets. The audience keeps showing up. Nobody in the system has any reason to dig. The pizza guy stays in the sewer. The war hero stays in the parking lot. The dog stays alive in the new timeline. The marriage stays married. The episode stays banned. The cut stays cut. The lights in the bar at the Drunken Clam come up the next morning. The same 4 men sit at the same booth, and the show begins again, the way it always does, as if nothing was ever wrong with anyone in this town at all. If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.